He was 67 years old, retired engineer, healthy enough to mow his own lawn, sharp enough to do the crossword in pen. That Tuesday morning, he woke up feeling exactly the way he always did, fine. No pressure in his chest, no shortness of breath, not even a headache. He did what he'd done for years, swung his legs over the side of the bed, stood up in one motion, and walked straight to the bathroom. He'd recently started taking cold showers, something he'd seen online. Good for circulation, they said. Good for longevity. So he cranked the handle to cold, stepped in, and let the water hit. 18 minutes later, his wife was on the phone with 911. "I'm Dr. Alex Thompson. I'm a cardiac surgeon. I was on call that morning, and I was the one who scrubbed in. He survived. But I want you to understand something clearly. Not every version of that story ends the way his did. I have stood at operating tables where it ended differently, where the wife was already in a waiting room that no one should ever have to sit in alone. What happened to him was not a stroke of bad luck. It was not some rare, unpredictable medical event. It was a sequence of ordinary morning habits, habits that felt harmless, habits that felt healthy, stacking on top of each other at the exact wrong moment in the exact wrong body. That's what makes this so important to talk about, because he is not unusual. He is the rule, not the exception. Millions of Americans over 60 are doing the same things he did every single morning, completely unaware of what those habits are doing to their cardiovascular system before they've had their first cup of coffee. The morning hours are the most dangerous window of the day for the human heart. The research on this is not subtle, and the mistakes people make during those first 20 minutes after waking are not complicated, but they are consequential. Today, I'm going to show you exactly what those mistakes are, why they matter more after 60 than at any other point in your life, and precisely what to do instead. So let's talk about why morning is the most dangerous time of day for your heart. Not metaphorically, physiologically. The data is unambiguous. Research published in the American Heart Journal documented that heart attacks occur at a rate approximately 40% higher between 6 and 10 in the morning than during any other 4-hour window in the day. 40%. That is not a rounding error. That is not statistical noise. That is a pattern so consistent, so reproducible across decades of cardiovascular research, that we gave it a clinical name. We call it the morning surge. And if you are over 60, that surge does not treat you the way it treated you at 40. It hits faster, it hits harder, and your body has significantly less reserve to absorb it. Here is what is actually happening inside you while you sleep. Your heart rate drops, your blood pressure falls, your entire autonomic nervous system settles into something close to stillness. The body is conserving, restoring, running on the lowest possible demand. Think of it as a city at 3 a.m. Quiet streets, minimal traffic, almost no load on the system. But roughly an hour before your eyes open, the city starts waking up whether you're ready or not. Cortisol begins rising while you are still dreaming. It is your body's internal alarm system, preparing your biology for the demands of consciousness before consciousness even arrives. Adrenaline follows close behind, and together, these two hormones do three things to your cardiovascular system in rapid succession. Your heart rate accelerates, your blood pressure climbs, and your blood vessels begin to constrict. All of that is happening before your alarm goes off. At 35, your body manages this transition smoothly. The arterial walls are supple. The heart responds with precision. The whole system shifts gears like a well-maintained engine. After 60, the machinery is different. Arterial walls stiffen with age. The system is slower to adapt. And here is the part that stops people cold when I explain it in the office. There may be plaque sitting silently inside your coronary arteries right now. Plaque you cannot feel. Plaque that has never caused you a single symptom. You feel fine. You are fine. Until that hormonal wave hits an arterial wall where vulnerable plaque has quietly accumulated. The mechanical force of that surge can fracture the plaque's surface. A fracture triggers the clotting cascade. And a clot lodged in a coronary artery is by definition a heart attack. That is not a worst-case scenario I am describing. That is the mechanism. That is what I have seen with my own hands on the operating table, more times than I care to count. Before you have taken a single step toward the kitchen, your heart is already working harder than it was an hour ago. What you choose to do in the next 5 minutes will either support it through that load or compound it. So let me ask you directly. Do you know what your blood pressure reads first thing in the morning? If the answer is no, That is where we start. Here is something I tell every patient over 60, and it surprises almost all of them the first time they hear it. Every single morning, without exception, you wake up dehydrated. Not severely, not dangerously, but measurably, clinically, consequentially dehydrated. And most people have no idea it is happening because they do not feel thirsty. That is part of what makes it so insidious. Thirst sensation diminishes with age. Your body stops sending the signal reliably. So you wake up, feel perfectly normal, and pour yourself a cup of coffee, which is a mild diuretic, while your cardiovascular system is already quietly under stress. Here is the biology. Over 7 or 8 hours of sleep, you have consumed nothing, not a drop. But your body has been working continuously. Breathing alone releases moisture with every single exhale, imperceptibly, steadily, all night long. By the time your eyes open, your blood volume has decreased, and your blood has thickened. Viscosity, the technical term for how thick and resistant a fluid is, rises measurably overnight in every adult, regardless of age or health status. Now think about what that means for your heart. Your heart is a pressure pump. Its entire job is to move blood through a closed system of vessels, some wide, some extraordinarily narrow. When that blood is well hydrated and flowing freely, the pump operates efficiently. Each beat moves in adequate volume with manageable effort. But when the fluid thickens, resistance increases throughout the entire network. The pump has to generate more force to move the same volume. Every beat costs more than it should. And there is a second problem that is frankly more dangerous than the fatigue on your heart muscle. Thicker blood clots more readily. Clotting factors, the proteins in your blood responsible for forming clots, are measurably more active in the early morning hours. This is not coincidental. It is one of the primary biological reasons why strokes and heart attacks concentrate so heavily in that 6 to 10 a.m. window. You are already contending with the cortisol surge, the adrenaline spike, the arterial stiffness that comes with age. Now layer elevated clotting activity on top of all of that, and you begin to understand why that window carries such disproportionate risk. The hormonal surge, the thickened blood, the stiffened vessels, 3 separate cardiovascular stressors converging simultaneously. Every single morning, in every body over 60. The intervention is so simple it almost seems inadequate for the problem it is solving. 1 full glass of water, room temperature, before your coffee, before your medication, before you check your phone, or say good morning to anyone. The moment your feet are ready to hit the floor, drink first. That single habit begins thinning your blood, reduces clotting risk, and eases the load on your heart during the most vulnerable minutes of your day. Put a glass on your nightstand tonight. That is the entire instruction. Let me be direct with you about something that has become almost impossible to avoid online. Cold showers, ice baths, freezing plunges at dawn. Social media has turned cold exposure into a kind of modern masculinity ritual. Influencers and biohackers filming themselves stepping into near-freezing water at 5 in the morning. Talking about mental fortitude, about unlocking peak performance, about living longer and sharper than everyone else. And here is the frustrating part. They are not entirely wrong. Cold exposure, applied correctly, does have legitimate physiological benefits. Reduced inflammation, improved circulation over time, a measurable effect on mood and alertness. I am not here to tell you the science is fabricated. What I am here to tell you is what those videos never mention and what that omission could cost you. Timing is not a minor detail. For anyone over 60, timing is everything. The moment cold water contacts your skin, your body launches an immediate, involuntary defense response. It is called the cold shock response, and it is not subtle. Peripheral blood vessels constrict in seconds to drive blood toward your vital organs and protect your core temperature. Your heart rate surges. Your systolic blood pressure can jump 20, sometimes 30 points. Not gradually, but in the span of a few heartbeats. Now place that response inside the context of where your body already is at 7 in the morning. Cortisol is elevated. Adrenaline is circulating. Your blood is running thicker than it was at midnight. Your arterial walls are carrying the morning surge load. And into all of that, you introduce a sudden, violent vascular constriction. For a healthy person in their early 30s, the cardiovascular system absorbs it. The vessels are elastic. The heart is resilient. The whole system processes the shock and resets without incident. For a 6-5-year-old, with even modest arterial stiffness, Stiffness that may have produced zero symptoms, zero warning, zero reason for concern. That same spike can be the threshold event. It can fracture vulnerable plaque. It can trigger a coronary spasm. It can destabilize an electrical rhythm that was perfectly steady moments before. The man I told you about at the opening of this video, the retired engineer, the one who made it the cold shower, was not incidental to what happened to him. It was the trigger. His arteries were not dramatically diseased. They were the arteries of a reasonably healthy man in his late 60s. But that morning, with everything already stacked against him, the cold shock was simply one demand too many. The adjustment I recommend is straightforward. Begin your shower at body temperature around 37 degrees. Let your vessels dilate. Let your pressure find a stable footing. If cold water is something you genuinely value, introduce it in the final 30 seconds, after your cardiovascular system has had time to settle. Same shower. Reversed order. Entirely different risk profile. That is a one-sentence change that your heart will notice every single morning. I want you to think about something you have done every single morning of your adult life and never once questioned. How do you get out of bed? Be honest with yourself. For most people, the sequence takes about 2 seconds. The alarm sounds, the eyes open, and the body is already moving, legs swinging over the edge, feet hitting the floor, upright and in motion, before the brain has fully registered that sleep is over. It feels efficient. It feels like the kind of disciplined morning energy that productive people are supposed to have. What it actually is, physiologically speaking, is one of the most abrupt cardiovascular demands you will place on your body all day. Here is what is happening beneath the surface. When you are lying flat, your blood is distributed with reasonable uniformity throughout your body. Your heart is managing a balanced, low-resistance circuit. The moment you shift to vertical, gravity immediately redirects a substantial volume of blood away from your brain and chest and downward into your legs and abdomen. Your cardiovascular system must respond to that redistribution, instantly tightening vessels, accelerating heart rate, doing everything necessary to maintain adequate pressure to the brain. In a 3-5-year-old, that compensatory response is fast, automatic, and essentially invisible. In a person over 60, it is slower. The vessels are less compliant. The reflex that catches the pressure drop takes longer to engage. And during that brief window of lag, blood pressure can fall 15, 20, sometimes 30 points within seconds of standing. We call this orthostatic hypotension. And if you have ever stood up too quickly and felt that wave of dizziness, that momentary grayness at the edges of your vision, that strange weightless unsteadiness, you have felt it firsthand. Most people over 60 who experience this assume it is simply part of aging, something to tolerate, an unremarkable inconvenience. It is not unremarkable. It is a signal worth taking seriously. Orthostatic hypotension is one of the leading documented causes of falls in older adults. And a serious fall at 65 or 70 is not a minor setback. It can initiate a cascade, a fracture, a surgery, an extended immobility that changes the entire trajectory of a person's health. For someone carrying any underlying cardiac vulnerability, the pressure drop itself forces the heart into an aggressive compensatory response, a rapid spike in rate and output that, in a susceptible system, can trigger an arrhythmia or something considerably worse. The solution requires no equipment, no medication, and no extra time you do not already have. Lie still for 10 seconds after waking. Then roll to your side and sit at the edge of the bed. Let your feet rest on the floor. Rotate your ankles slowly, 5 rotations in each direction. This simple movement activates the calf muscles, which act as a secondary pump, pushing pooled blood back up toward the heart before you ever ask your body to stand. 30 seconds sitting. Then rise slowly, deliberately, and stand still for a full 10 seconds before taking your first step. That is the entire adjustment. 40 seconds of intention between sleep and standing. I have seen what happens when people skip it. I have also seen what happens when they don't. I know very clearly which outcome I am describing this for. I want to ask you something personal, and I want you to answer it honestly. Are you currently taking a diuretic? You may know it by its common name, a water pill. It is one of the most frequently prescribed medications in the country for managing high blood pressure. And if you are over 60 with any history of hypertension or heart disease, there is a reasonable chance it is sitting in your medicine cabinet right now. If the answer is yes, there is something I need you to hear. Something that is not complicated, not alarming, but critically important. and something that, in my experience, does not get communicated nearly as often as it should. Diuretics do exactly what their name suggests. They prompt your kidneys to excrete excess fluid, which reduces blood volume, which reduces the pressure your heart has to work against. The mechanism is sound. The clinical results are well documented. These are not medications I am asking you to question. What I am asking you to understand is what else leaves your body along with that fluid. When your kidneys increase their output, they do not selectively filter out only the things you want gone. Minerals leave with the fluid, and one mineral in particular, magnesium, is lost in amounts that most patients and, frankly, many physicians do not adequately track. Magnesium is not a peripheral nutrient. It is not optional background chemistry. It is the mineral that governs the electrical conduction system of your heart. Every beat your heart produces the precise timing, the coordinated contraction. The proper relaxation of the muscle between beats depends on adequate magnesium at the cellular level. It is the element that keeps your cardiac rhythm honest. When magnesium levels fall, that electrical precision begins to erode. The heart becomes, in clinical terms, electrically irritable. Beats arrive early or late. Rhythms that were steady become unpredictable. Palpitations appear. Skipped beats that feel alarming in the chest. And in more serious cases, sustained arrhythmias that carry real consequences. What makes this particularly dangerous is the silence of it. Magnesium deficiency does not announce itself with obvious symptoms. It depletes gradually, quietly, across weeks and months, while you feel essentially normal. And then the morning comes, the hour when your heart is already under its greatest daily stress, already managing the hormonal surge, already working harder than it was at midnight. And a magnesium-depleted cardiac system has far less tolerance for that load. I have sat across from patients whose morning arrhythmias had persisted for months, who had undergone multiple evaluations, whose rhythms normalized completely once we identified and corrected a magnesium deficiency. Not an exotic diagnosis, not a rare finding. More common than the medical community openly acknowledges. If you are on a diuretic, I am asking you to do one thing at your next appointment. Ask your physician to check your serum magnesium level. It is a standard blood test. It requires no special preparation. It takes 2 minutes to order and produces information that could be genuinely consequential for your heart's long-term stability. Do not assume your levels are adequate simply because no one has told you otherwise. No one checked. I can already anticipate what some of you are thinking right now. Dr. Thompson, I exercise every morning. I have for years. My doctor encourages it. I feel better on the days I move than the days I don't. Are you telling me to stop? No. I am not telling you to stop. I want to be unambiguous about that before we go any further. Regular physical activity is one of the most powerful cardiovascular medicines available to a human being over 60. The evidence behind that statement is not modest or preliminary. It is decades deep, reproduced across thousands of studies, and consistent across every major cardiac research institution in the world. Exercise strengthens the heart muscle. It improves the elasticity of arterial walls. It reduces chronic inflammation, lowers resting blood pressure, and builds the kind of metabolic and cardiovascular reserve that determines how well your body handles stress, illness, and aging. Your doctor is right. Movement is medicine. What I am asking you to examine is not whether you exercise in the morning. It is how. Because here is what the research reveals, and what very few people, including many physicians, discuss openly with their patients over 60. The morning is not a neutral starting point for physical exertion. It is a loaded one. By the time you lace up your shoes, your body is already carrying a significant cardiovascular burden. Cortisol is elevated from the pre-dawn hormonal surge. Blood pressure is running higher than it was while you slept. Your blood is measurably more viscous than it will be 3 hours from now. Your coronary arteries, still slightly constricted from the morning's hormonal activity, are already delivering less than their peak capacity to your heart muscle. Now add vigorous exercise on top of that baseline. No warm-up, no transition, just intensity from the first minute. Your heart rate climbs sharply, not from a rested state, but from an already elevated morning baseline. Blood pressure rises further, stacking on top of a morning pressure that is already near its daily peak. And your coronary arteries, the vessels responsible for supplying the heart muscle itself with oxygenated blood, are being asked to dramatically increase their output at precisely the moment they are least prepared to do so. This is not a theoretical concern. Research published in Circulation, one of the most respected cardiovascular journals in medicine, documented that vigorous physical exertion during the early morning hours carries a statistically meaningful, elevated risk of triggering a cardiac event in adults over 60, specifically in those with any degree of underlying arterial disease, which, as I have already noted, may be present without a single symptom to suggest it. I want to be precise here, because precision matters. The finding is not that morning exercise is dangerous. The finding is that the absence of an adequate transition period before intensity is dangerous. Those are very different statements, and the distinction is entirely within your control. Your body needs time to move through its morning physiology before you ask it to perform. Not hours, 20 to 30 minutes. That is the window that allows cortisol to begin its natural decline, blood pressure to ease down from its morning peak, circulation to reach the muscles and tissues that exercise will demand from, and the coronary arteries to dilate toward their functional capacity. Within that window, movement is not only acceptable, it is beneficial. A slow walk through the neighborhood, gentle stretching on a mat, deliberate, unhurried mobility work that invites the body to wake up rather than demanding that it perform. These are not lesser forms of exercise. They are the appropriate first chapter of a morning that includes intensity later. Think of it as the warm-up your cardiovascular system requires before your muscles even enter the conversation. The walk before the workout, the stretch before the strain, the 20 minutes of gentle circulation before you ask your heart to climb. That sequencing, that simple respect for where your body actually is at 7 in the morning is what separates an exercise habit that protects your heart from one that quietly, unknowingly, places it under a risk it did not need to carry. So let me ask you directly, and I genuinely want your answer in the comments below. When you exercise in the morning, do you give your body time to transition first, or do you simply begin? Your answer matters more than you may realize. You now understand the biology. You understand why the morning is the most cardiovascularly demanding period of your day, and why the habits most people carry through it without a second thought can quietly compound into something serious. So let's talk about what to actually do, because understanding the danger is only useful if it leads somewhere concrete. I am not interested in leaving you with anxiety. I am interested in leaving you with a protocol. This is what I call the 5-minute morning shield. No prescription required, no equipment, no cost. Just 5 deliberate minutes that give your heart the transition it has been asking for every morning of your life. Minute 1, don't move yet. When your alarm sounds, resist every instinct that tells you to rise immediately. Stay exactly where you are. Close your eyes if it helps. Draw 3 slow, full breaths in through the nose for a count of 4, out through the mouth for a count of 6. This is not a wellness ritual. This is physiology. Controlled breathing directly activates the parasympathetic nervous system, the branch responsible for calm, for lowering heart rate, for counteracting the cortisol surge that is already peaking in your bloodstream. 3 breaths. That is all it takes to begin shifting the chemistry of your morning. Minute 2, hydrate before you rise. Before your feet touch the floor, reach for the glass of water you placed on your nightstand the night before. Room temperature. Drink the entire glass deliberately. Overnight dehydration has thickened your blood and elevated your clotting risk. This single glass begins reversing both. It is one of the highest return habits in cardiovascular medicine, and it costs nothing beyond the intention to do it consistently. Minute 3, sit before you stand. Roll slowly to your side. Press yourself upright with your arms. Sit at the edge of the bed with both feet resting on the floor. Now rotate your ankles 5 slow circles in each direction. This movement recruits the calf muscle pump, actively pushing pooled blood back toward the heart and brain before gravity has a chance to pull your pressure downward without warning. Minute 4, wake the body gently. Still seated, begin moving your upper body with intention. Roll your neck slowly side to side. Lift and drop your shoulders. Raise both arms overhead and hold for a breath. You are not stretching for flexibility. You are incrementally raising circulation, giving your heart rate permission to climb at a pace it can manage rather than a pace it is forced to match. Minute 5, rise with purpose. Place both feet firmly on the floor. Press through your legs and stand at half your normal speed. Once upright, stand completely still for 10 full seconds before taking your first step. Let your blood pressure settle into its new position. Let your cardiovascular system confirm its footing before the day begins. 5 minutes. That is the entire protocol. On the mornings you follow it, your heart does not start the day ambushed. It starts the day supported, eased, through the most dangerous physiological window it will face until tomorrow morning. That is a trade worth making every single day. I want you to sit with something before we close. Nothing I have described today is unusual. None of it is rare medical territory reserved for the critically ill or the unlucky. Every risk I have walked you through is unfolding in ordinary bedrooms across this country every single morning in houses that look exactly like yours, belonging to people who feel perfectly fine and have no reason to believe otherwise. That is the part that has never left me. After years at the operating table, the cases I carry home are never the complicated ones. They are the preventable ones. The 70-year-old woman who stood up too quickly on a Tuesday and never regained full function. The grandfather who stepped into a cold shower feeling strong and was found on the bathroom floor 20 minutes later. These were not fragile people. They were not patients anyone would have looked at and worried about. They simply did not have the information you now have. And that changes something. The morning danger zone is real. The research behind everything I have shared is not preliminary or contested. It is established cardiovascular science. But here is what I most need you to understand. It is also among the most correctable risks in all of medicine. Unlike your genetic history, unlike the decades of diet and stress already written into your arterial walls, your morning routine is something you can rewrite tonight. Before tomorrow's alarm, without a prescription, without a procedure, 5 minutes. That is the distance between ambushed and protected. 3 months after I operated on that retired engineer, the man from the beginning of this video, he came back to my office for a follow-up. He was well. He looked good. And the first thing he said when he sat down was quietly devastating in the best possible way. Why didn't anyone tell me this sooner? That question is why I am here. It is why I keep showing up to make these videos. Because the answer should never be because no one thought to mention it. You know now. The question that remains is simply what you do with it. Share this with someone who needs it. A spouse, a sibling, a friend who you know jumps straight out of bed every morning without a second thought. They may not know they need this yet. Your heart has not missed a single beat in your defense. Give it 5 careful minutes tomorrow morning. It has more than earned them. Dr. Alex Thompson, cardiac surgeon. Everything shared in this video reflects published cardiovascular research and clinical experience. It is educational in nature, not medical advice. Please consult your own physician before making changes to your medications, exercise routine, or morning habits. Your history is unique. Honor it with professional guidance.